Hello everybody, this is Graeme Anderson, and today I'm going to be looking at Wise Guys. Now the theme of this game was one of crime gangs fighting for control of the underground booze trade in Chicago during the 1920s when the US had prohibition. Now I found out later on this is actually a re-implementation of the Sons of Anarchy game, which I haven't played, so this isn't going to be a compare and contrast between the two versions. Now the main idea of the game is to be using your gang members to take control of locations and to exploit them to gain clout in the city and ultimately sell your booze on the black market for profit. And at the end of the game, it all comes down to cold, hard cash to determine the winner. And of course, the winner is going to be the best rum runner in the city of Chicago. Now the game is a very confrontational game where you're always going to be wheeling and dealing with your opponents or outright fighting them to try and eke out your corner of the city's booze consumption. But even then, if there's too much booze on the market, then the price goes down. Now each game is going to have a different set of locations to be used and a variety of event cards that can change up the rules from round to round. So, will this game be like a top shelf rum or just a bottom shelf hooch? Let's get it to the table, see how it's played, and we'll come back with my final opinion on Wise Guys. So here we have Wise Guys set up for 4 players. Place the 5 starting locations in the middle of the table. These are going to be the same for every game. Shuffle the rest of the business locations and place 6 face down. The others go back in the box. Shuffle the Roaring 20s deck and place 15 in the face down deck. The rest go back in the box. These Roaring 20 cards can have rules which will alter each round and are basically the timer of the game. When the last 3 are dealt out, you're in the last round of the game. And at the end of the game, the player with the most money is the winner. Each player rolls a die, and the highest rolled gets to choose their gang first, and proceed with the player on the left. The last player to choose will also get the Boss of Bosses token. Any time order of play is important, the player with the Boss of Bosses token goes first. Then it goes in clockwise order. The other advantage of the Boss of Bosses is that they are the godfather and decide who wins and ties during the game, even if they are not involved with the tie. The Boss of Bosses token does not move each round. It only changes hands when another player controls City Hall and issues an exploit location, and I'll talk about exploiting locations later when I talk about the actions you can do, or if another player defeats the boss in a fight. Once each player has picked their gang, the clubhouse card will be their base of operations. It has a clout track on the right, and this represents your influence you can call upon to stay out of trouble. It also has how much booze you can sell each round. Each player will also get the assets shown on the clubhouse card. You start with cash, guns, and booze, which go behind your asset blind, and these are the only things which are hidden in the game. You'll also take a number of members as listed in your clubhouse, made up of made men and associates, and these again are public information. Now when selecting your members, you have a choice of which made men you want to start with. Each one will have 2 different stats, one slugging and one talking. Both of these stats are used for when you're fighting a location. Your associates are always 1 and 1 for these stats. Any unused made men or associates are placed beside your clubhouse in what's referred to as your recruit pool. Remember, any members on your clubhouse can be deployed, but the ones off to the side in your recruit pool are not in the game yet. The last thing you do is mark your clout. Your clubhouse will have the word start on your clout track, and you just place your marker there. You're now ready to start the game, and the game is played over 6 rounds, each round having 7 steps. The first step is to collect your order tokens. You will receive order tokens equal to what your clubhouse card says, plus the number of made men you have. Associates do not count for this calculation. You put these orders in front of your clubhouse so all players can see. Next, reveal 2 new business locations, if available. These will remain for the remainder of the game. Third step is to reveal new Roaring 20s cards. In the first round, you're just going to reveal 1, round 2 you reveal 2, and then for all subsequent rounds, you're going to be revealing 3. The next step is really the heart of the game, and that is going to be issuing orders. Players will issue orders one at a time in turn order, starting with the Boss of Bosses. To issue an order, you must discard an order token, and this step ends when all the players have used their order tokens. With these order tokens, you can drive to a location. That is, move as many of your gang members from one location to any other single location. You can exploit a location for an order. You can use the special ability of an unexploited location that you control. Since each location can only be exploited once per round, place your order token on the location to signify that. To control a location, no other gang may have any members at the location. These locations will do a variety of things, but some will cause you to lose clout. And whenever you lose clout, you move your clout marker down that many steps. And I'll talk a bit more about clout later. For an order, you can also recruit an associate. Take one of the associates from beside your clubhouse and add them to your clubhouse. You can have no more than 5 associates in your gang at any time. For an order, you can also initiate a made man. That promotes one of your associates into a made man.
It costs 1 cash token and 1 gun token to do this. You return the associate to your recruit pool and replace it with a made man from your recruit pool. You may not have more than 5 made men at any one time. For an order, you can also sit tight. That is, you discard an order token and do nothing at all. Sometimes you just want to sit back and see what the other players are going to do. Also, if you have no order tokens left, you will do this automatically on your turn. For an order, you can also issue your gang order, which is unique to your gang, and it will be outlined on your clubhouse. The last order you can issue is to fight for a location. That is, you're going to try and gain control for a location. You must have at least 1 made man at the location, as an associate cannot initiate a fight. And the fight is only amongst the gang members that have members at that location. Starting to the player to the left of the initiator, each gang in the fight can call on backup. They only get 1 chance to do this, and they can discard an order token to move their members from one location to this fight location. For each location they want to move their members from, it's going to cost an order token. After all the involved players have called for backup and the fight is a slugging fight, they will secretly decide how many guns they want to bring to the fight. They can bring 0 up to the number of members they have in that fight. They conceal their guns in their hands, and all players reveal at once. Once backup has been called, and if it's a slugging fight, guns revealed, each gang member will roll the fight die and add the slugging or talking stat for each of their members that they have in the fight. And if it's a slugging fight, you'll add up to 3 for each gun that they brought. The player with the highest total is the winner of the fight. In the event of a tie, the boss of bosses will decide who wins. If you win the fight, you now control the location. And if you issued the fight order at the location, which has not been exploited this round, you can exploit it right now by spending an order token. And finally, if the boss of bosses was defeated in this fight, you now take the boss of bosses token. All other players will move their members back to the clubhouse. Now, I should say that if the fight was a slugging fight, for each gun you pulled, you assign it to another gang who was in that fight. For each gun you receive this way, you must send one of your members that was in the fight to the emergency room. If the winning gang loses all of their members at the location because of them being injured this way, they do not control the location and therefore cannot exploit it. It's going to be an empty location, as all the other gang members would still pull all their people back to their clubhouse. If any player pulled any number of guns during the fight, that player must lose 1 clout. After the fight, all the guns drawn are discarded. So this step of the round of issuing orders is complete when all players have used up their order tokens and you move to the black market phase. Each player will secretly decide how many balls of booze they wish to sell by placing them in their hand again. All players reveal at the same time. Based on the total number of booze sold by all the players, that will dictate how much each bottle is worth. The more booze on the market, the cheaper it is. You can only sell as much booze as your clout allows. After players have sold their booze, any player who did sell any quantity of booze will also lose 1 clout. After the black market step is done, see if there are any last call actions on the face-up Roaring 20s cards. And the last step of the round is the cleanup step. Clear all the order tokens, return any members on an opportunity Roaring 20 cards back to their clubhouse, discard all the Roaring 20 cards, and check if there are any members in the emergency room. If there are, each player will roll a die for each of their members in the emergency room, and they're going to return them either to the clubhouse or to the recruit pool. So at the end of the round, there should be no members left in the emergency room. Now, one last rule I did want to mention is the clout tracker. This controls how much clout you have in the city and the amount of booze you can sell. If you ever run out of clout, you must immediately have one of your made men take the fall for you by returning it to your recruit pool. If you must take the fall and you have no made men left, well then your gang is disbanded and you're out of the game. At the end of 6 rounds, it comes down to how much cash each player has, and whoever has the most cash at the end of the game is going to be the winner. And that's how you play. Now let's get back to see what I thought about Wise Guys.
Let's have a look at theme and components. This is a reworking of the Sons of Anarchy game, which I haven't played, but I felt actually the theme worked reasonably well for this one. A lot of what you're doing just makes thematic sense. Controlling locations so you can exploit them, or having clout means that people in the city, owe you flavors, so they're going to be looking the other way when you sell your booze. The different events brought on by the Roaring 20 cards, and even the Godfather, or the Boss of Bosses, being the tiebreaker that you could maybe bribe when it's required. And that's kind of one piece I felt was lacking for me theme-wise, was the whole table talk, bribing, threatening, etc. In the games I played, I never felt there was much need to. It was always a take down the leader game, and there really didn't seem to be a lot of opportunities to make and break deals with your opponents, as only one person can win, and there's only a fixed number of rounds. But for the rest of the game, for the most part, it's a pretty thematic game. Now, as for the components, I thought they were really good. The cardboard components are nice and thick. I like the art style of the game, and I thought that things were really laid out. Now, there is a little bit of background in everybody's clubhouse card, which I thought was really good. And I like that all the made men have different art and are all named. The rule book is also reasonably well done, so there's not a lot for me to complain about here. You know, it's a good job on the components. Now let's get on to the gameplay. Now before I started what I liked and didn't like about the game, I did want to let you know that I'm usually not a fan of area control in these direct confrontational games like this. So that will certainly color my opinion of the game. But with that being said, there were several things that I really enjoyed about this game. The first was really the variability of the game. There are 19 location tiles here, in addition to the 6 that you start with. Now, the tiles aren't, wildly different, but some of them are definitely feel more powerful than others. Many of them just have you maybe gain a resource or maybe convert resources. And often, they'll have a little thing that says boost on the bottom here, which I didn't mention in the overview, but it gives you the ability, when you exploit this location, you can spend an additional order to automatically take the boost action. So although I like that each game used a different set of these tiles, it really didn't change up the feel of the game, as almost all these tiles kind of did the same thing. The few more powerful tiles were definitely the ones that people fought over each game, and honestly, some of these other ones people just tend to ignore. The Rory's 20 cards, another variable from game to game. Again, there's quite a number of these. Unfortunately, they're kind of mundane, and some of them just felt overpowered and maybe unbalanced. So I like the idea of them, but in future I might actually go through this deck and take out the cards I felt were too powerful or too hurtful to other players. This, like the locations, is something I personally had an issue with, but with your group you might enjoy the powerful unbalanced cards, as it makes the game much more swingy. And you know what? Some groups just like that. The other thing I enjoyed about the game was the unique powers and the gang orders each player had. Now I mentioned that each person has a gang order here. You also have a gang rule, which is specific to you. It could be from not needing to discard a token to initiate a slugging fight, or getting $1 every time you trade a trade during using booze. So the initial draft can really help you get that gang that maybe fits your play style to some degree. Now the one piece of the game I really disliked was this clout track here. It kind of soured the whole game for me. Some gangs start with 1 clout, which means you can only sell 1 bottle of booze. And if you do, you're going to lose their clout. They spend so much time trying to get their clout because it all comes down to getting money, and selling booze means getting money. Other gangs, like this one here, starts with 4 clout. They can sell as much as they want, and they still only lose 1 clout. In some games I played, there was only 1 location that, when exploited, gave you any clout. So most of the game was spent, around the other locations. The entire deck, there's only a few locations that you can get clout, and one of them being the starting location. With little or no clout, you really can't use guns in a fight, and you have to pick and choose when you sell booze. So you're kind of left looking at the tiles that are going to give you cash. I just felt that the clout track was too easy to lose and too hard to get back, that it made the game feels like it was all about kind of managing your clout just so you could sell booze. That didn't sit well for me in the games. Now, I did like the actual idea of selling the booze, where everyone kind of secretly picks how much they want to sell, and the less there is on the market, the more that they're worth. But we had so many rounds in our games where you knew that maybe you were the only seller because no one else had any clout. I kind of wish you got clout back maybe for not selling booze, or maybe you could bribe a politician or donating money or something other than exploiting the location for clout, since those seem to be few and far between. This clout issue also kind of permeated other areas of the game for me as well. No one wanted to bring guns to a fight unless you're fighting for a location that gave you clout. And there was no point in collecting booze if you couldn't sell it, and no point in collecting guns if you couldn't use them. So it all came down to either fighting for the clout or just going after the ones that gave you money every round. Okay, so enough about the clout. One of the other aspects of the game I didn't like, that didn't work for my group anyway, and this is going to be very group dependent, is the trading, bribery, intimidation, kind of backstabbing that I thought was going to be in this game. There's a whole section in the rulebook about what is and isn't fair game and what's not. The only time this came up was when there was a tiebreaker and the boss of bosses got to decide who won, assuming of course they weren't part of the fight. It rarely cropped up in the rest of the game. Of course, maybe your group is going to be more open to that, but we just didn't see the point most of the time. Of course, this could have just been my group, but we really kind of objectively couldn't see too many opportunities where it made sense to make these kind of deals. So would I recommend this game? I think this is going to be very group dependent, and I do have a fairly large issues with within constants for the game, so it just didn't gel for my group, so I'm not going to recommend it, but only just. I enjoyed the theme and how it was implemented in most of the game, and it made it a bit easier to teach. I really like the components for this one, from the art to the quality of the cardboard. I like the variability of the game, from the unique gang to the random set of locations of the Roaring 20 cards, putting aside my issue with a lot of the cards being the same and a lot of the locations being the same. I like the idea of the different locations requiring different skills to fight with. I also really like the secret black market phase where you sell your booze. I like that all the actions were pretty straightforward and quick to do, and the game ends up being, a good length of time. Now for the negatives. I felt that some of the locations rolling 20 cards just seemed overly powerful or overly hurtful to other players. I was not a huge fan of the emergency room randomness, and I would like to have an option to maybe pay up front for extra hospital care instead of rolling the die. And maybe if you couldn't afford it or didn't want to give up those money or victory points, then you just rolled. But my big negative was the clout track. It was just too easy to lose, combined with the fact that one location and a couple of rolling 20 cards can give you the ability just to take clout away from other gangs, and almost impossible to get back if you couldn't take over a location, or hopefully locations that give you clout. Having clout is directly tied to being able to sell booze. No one had any problems getting booze. Some just had a huge problem selling the booze, so you seem to have to work extra hard to make money. I also felt that the whole negotiation side of the game just kind of fell flat for my group. The game also really works best at 4-player count and would probably even benefit from a 5th player expansion to really get that negotiation going. With 3 players, the negotiation didn't work at all. Overall though, I'm going to give this game a 6 out of 10. I felt the clout track issue I had was just not something I can overcome, combined with a feeling that there was a lack of need to do much negotiation or blackmailing. It just left the game feeling a little flat. Now, if your group really gets negotiation against the theme, you might be able to wring more enjoyment out of this game, but for me, this is not a game I'm going to be going back to anytime soon. And that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.